an update that we got on Saturday before the Astros game against the Detroit Tigers, where we found out that Justin Verlander was scratched. Spencer Arrighetti comes in and he gives up 10 runs. Excuse me, he didn't even make it out of the second inning. But the Astros gave up 10 runs in the first 3 innings, and Arrighetti got shelled along the way. Arrighetti even said afterwards, this has nothing to do with the change in schedule. Justin Verlander, for his part, the Astros pitcher, was asked, hey, what's going on with the neck injury that caused the scratch on Saturday? Here's what he had to say.
A couple weeks ago, between starts, just kind of neck got a little tight on me. And, been able to kind of navigate through it, but talking with the trainers and team with the couple off days we had around this, we thought it would probably be best to really try to get over the hump and hopefully resolve this thing for good.
What's next for you? Are you just taking it day by day?
Yeah, I wish I could give you a concrete answer. I think it's kind of following the same pattern where after I throw a little bit, it gets a little flared up, and then kind of got to work through it. If this was playoff time, I'd like to think I'd be out there, but but that pattern where it's just kind of like every day getting a little bit better. I think this time around, like I said with the off days, I think talking with everybody, we think it's the best to try to just let it fully resolve itself, and hopefully it does.
It's so frustrating hearing Verlander say that he's been dealing with this for weeks, and that on Wednesday at his bullpen session, he felt it there, and that we go from Wednesday to Saturday, where it seems the Astros had no plan, and then he just gets scratched on Saturday. And when you combine that with the latest on Kyle Tucker, who is, per Dana Brown, quote, trending in the right direction, end quote, and is, quote, getting close, end quote, to the point he'd be sent on a minor league rehab assignment. How can you have any faith in the Astros training or medical staff? And maybe you can put this one on Justin Verlander for playing through it and not telling anybody about it. But, we've been looking at who the next person will be outside of the first baseman whose name we will never mention again on this show, seeing as he is no longer a part of the team. And to me, the way that the Astros have managed injuries over the last couple of seasons, and this year in particular, it drives you crazy. And I get it. I'm not asking for them to share all of these players' vitals every single day. I don't need to see all of their records, but they are seemingly mismanaging these guys, and you can't afford to be without Justin Verlander for any time. Could you have perhaps made this go away if, when Verlander feels that at first, you find a way to give him a start off? But now you're in a spot due to the lack of depth that something that I guess has been dealt with by Verlander for the last couple of weeks is now causing him to get scratched last second, and you get shelled by the Tigers in a series where you should have walked away with a sweep.
Yeah, I mean, the Astros have done us no favors, or done themselves no favors, and giving them reason to believe them with injuries. I don't think it's unfair for Astros fans to hear neck injury and just think, well, he's probably having Tommy John, because this is what we just went through with Christian Javier. We just saw this. And it's funny, like, you hear weeks, everyone's definition of weeks is always a little bit different, but you look at Justin Verlander's last 2 starts on the 6th and the 9th. He pitched a total of 10 innings. He gave up 14 hits. He gave up 8 earned runs. He struck out 7 batters total in those 2 games. His previous 2 starts, he pitched 13 innings, gave up 11 hits, but he struck out 18 batters. So, like, you kind of see Seattle and Oakland, he dominates. St. Louis and the Angels, in the last 2 weeks, this month, in the last 17 days now, he struggled. And I would have rather him miss one of those starts, figure out what's going on, take a breather, and figure out what's next, versus letting someone at his age, not to be ageist again, but try to push through a neck injury in which he's hopeful it's only going to be 1 start. But if every single time he's pitching, it flares up and is a problem, well, then you have a bigger problem you have to solve. And the Astros don't deserve any belief that they're going to be able to identify this quickly and figure out how to make it better.
Yeah, whenever they say something about injuries, it's just hard to believe them. And, the last time we heard about a neck injury with an Astros pitcher, Christian Javier's season is over. To go a little bit further, okay, Verlander is scheduled to pitch on Friday against the Baltimore Orioles, but to what you were saying, you'd rather him miss games against teams that aren't as good. Obviously, you don't see the future and find yourself going into this coming weekend series at Minute Maid Park against the Orioles. You don't know that you're going to be potentially without Verlander for specifically that series, but if there was a series to have the guy who has won a Cy Young Award fairly recently despite being in his 40s, that's the one I want Verlander available for. And now you got to wonder, okay, so he's day-to-day, but does that mean an injured list stint is coming?
Well,
if that's the case, I mean, you're going to be in some real trouble in the starting rotation and might have to put some guys out there that never have done it.
I mean, that's where Dana Brown's always he's always talking out both sides of his mouth and just contradicts himself in a lot of ways. So he was on with Robert Ford before they do a pregame interview every Sunday. And he said it's looking like Justin Verlander could return Wednesday or Thursday in Chicago. Right now, Thursday is listed as to be announced. And then there was also saying it doesn't look like Verlander will need an injured list. Well, could return and doesn't look like he needs an injured list stint, to me, are very different things. You shouldn't even be considering the injured list if you're thinking he's also going to be back Wednesday or Thursday. Why are you? It should be a yes or no to the injured list. And really, it should be a no if he can pitch Wednesday or Thursday. But the Astros don't really know what's going on. It just makes me think back to when I worked at the Flagship in 2020, and Dusty Baker came in and did an interview, like his first interview of the season, and he started giving way too much detail. He started talking about players' injuries. This is right when Justin Verlander and Yordan Alvarez get hurt, and he starts giving all this information. And then the next week he comes on, and they start asking him questions, and he's like, "Oh, well, I said too much last week, so they're not giving me as much information." Like, that's kind of what this seems like. We're like, you just don't know who even has the information of what's going on with the Astros players, because since 2020, they've been lying. Like, they've been lying, they've been deceitful, and they just don't tell the truth about their players and the status of, what's going on.
And it would probably be in the best interest of a manager to know what his player is dealing with. If you're so scared about how he talks about it on the radio, then maybe your bigger problem is letting him do those interviews to begin with.
Yeah.
Or you didn't have a great plan as far as what he could theoretically do on the fly if challenged on the health of some of these players. Unfortunately, you're now looking at your starting rotation again right now with this Verlander neck issue. And how can you believe that everything is going to be fine and that he's going to make that next scheduled start? No matter what you heard from Verlander who seemed to be downplaying it a bit, he's been dealing with a neck injury for weeks, and finally it got to the point where he got scratched. It took him playing through for them to make seemingly the right medical choice as opposed to being proactive here, and I feel like that's very consistent with anything that we've heard about the Astros on the injury front over the last couple of seasons.
The way I hear Justin Verlander talk is the Astros didn't make this call. He made this call. He said, "Hey, let's dial this back here. It's a little too much right now. I'm gonna skip this start. Hopefully, we'll be back on Wednesday." This doesn't sound like an Astros decision. It sounds like a Verlander decision.
And if it is a Verlander decision, you know what? I'd kind of get it, given all of the injuries that Astros pitchers have had, to blame the training staff, medical staff on that, as opposed to just how all pitchers seem to be getting elbow surgeries these days. Maybe that's not fair to do, but if I'm an Astros pitcher, say I'm Lance McCullers, and I'm seeing some guys who are coming back a little bit too early this year, seemingly Jose Urquidy, Christian Javier, I would take my time, and I probably would ignore what they're asking me to do. And if I'm Justin Verlander, I definitely have the pelt on the wall to completely ignore them.